Hey guys, I just got out of the theater with my family seeing Little Mermaid, and I don't want to be entirely negative. So I want to say right out of the gate, the popcorn was incredible. Absolutely stunning. Movie popcorn is the top. Nothing else compares. And that's probably all I got. I went in with low expectations, and they were met. I'll give you my review of this movie as an adaptation and also as its own thing. And I'll also give you my kids' thoughts. You know, it occurred to me recently, I've got this great resource I'm not using. I have all these kids, I take them to the theater, I might as well give you their thoughts too. I had very low expectation because it's just a retelling of a classic animated story with no change other than its live action. The next good trope, bad trope is about remakes, and one of the things I want to talk about is that a remake needs to have a point. Hook is my favorite example. It's not just a retelling of Peter Pan, it asks the question, what if Peter Pan escaped Neverland and totally forgot who he was? Or the new Dune movie is showing off technological advances in cinema that weren't available in the 80s. This movie has no reason to exist. It doesn't expand on the ideas of the original movie in any way whatsoever. It doesn't bring some new technology to the table. It just tweaks a few of the plot points to appease this fictitious modern audience. It's just a soulless Disney cash grab. So you know the plot of the original, and this sticks pretty close to it, so let's just talk about the changes. Up first are the visuals. This is probably my biggest gripe about the movie because I feel like it really destroys what made the original movie so great. These new directors, the new company, they don't respect animation and what makes it so amazing. It's an incredible medium. It allows for unrealistic things. It allows for extra expressions. It allows for things like fish with eyebrows so that their talking and their expressions make sense. And you don't get this ridiculous looking flounder that is just a realistic looking fish with gigantic eyes. He's horrifying. Animation gives you the tools to tell a better story because you're not constricted by the bounds of reality. That's why it's so good. It also lets you hide your actors in a booth. We'll talk about this with the individual characters, but voice actors are usually grown people. And if you ever watch footage of voice actors, they get crazy in the booth. Like they use their entire body and it comes across in their voice. The original Little Mermaid was 28 years old when she recorded that movie, and it shows she was an experienced actress. Now we have to see a live 18-year-old Halle Bailey, and she's just not as good. Animated movies usually center on younger characters, so when you do live action, you have to cast young people. The recent Peter Pan and Wendy was a good example. The kid that played Peter Pan, he sucked, but that's not his fault. He's a kid. Child actors usually aren't that great. They don't have the training, they don't have the experience, but that's what you get when you get away from animation and professional voice actors, and you have to hand it over to child actors. Obviously, I like Harry Potter, but let's be honest with ourselves, the original movies, the worst part of those were the children that had to be the protagonists of the movie. They were terrible actors. Animation also allows for expressions that are more expressive. When you're seeing animation or reading books, you often have characters that are expressing multiple emotions at one time. Emotional combinations that a real live human actor cannot ever possibly get. But when you're doing animation, you can make it happen. Everything in this movie is blurry and dark. The CGI is absolutely god awful. There were many times that my wife felt kind of like she didn't say queasy or sick or dizzy, but like getting to that point, like the whole thing made her feel very physically uncomfortable because everything was moving so quickly, everything was blurry, and that's just a sign of them trying to cover up the shoddy CGI that's in this movie. The visuals overall were just subpar. It was just garbage. Most of everything was very drab colored, everything was very dark. There were only 2 times that I really felt like there was a nice bright pop of color like you would see in the animated movie. The Under the Sea song was very bright, very vibrant, a lot of motion going on. It was a very good time. And then the intro, when we first go under the sea and we're kind of following a mermaid along and we're seeing the Mermaid Kingdom, it's somewhat dark, but there's like rays of sunshine coming through, so there are bright spots. Those are really the only 2 times I can remember. Everything else was just dreary, it was blurry, it was dark, it was just bad looking. The last thing with the visuals, and this made, it was, nobody knew what to do with their body. Because, you know, these actors don't have the tails on them, they're just standing there acting, and so they have to look like they're swimming. And everybody kept doing this with their arms. They would just be like standing in place and their CGI tail is moving and they're just doing this, or like they're swimming away and they would turn back and they're doing this while they're swimming. It was the most distracting nonsense. I don't know who told them that they had to constantly just be moving around as though they were in moving water, but it was god awful. Next up, we've got the plot changes. Overall, this story adheres beat for beat to the original. We had a few tweaks, a few additions. The additions were trying to flesh out some things that the first movie never really explained, like why do Triton and Ursula hate each other? Why can't the mermaids go to the surface? What is even going on with Eric at all? He's a pretty blank slate. The changes to the plot are the feminist message that you are expecting. You know it's going to be there, and it absolutely is. They're trying to push this like independent, people don't need each other. Certainly Ariel doesn't need a man. For some reason, the spell to give her legs also includes this little minor thing where she forgets that she's even trying to kiss Eric, and they did that to explain why she's not chasing after him at all. They take very great pains to tell you she's in love with the human world. She's not in love with Eric. The scene where she sees him on the ship and she talks about how gorgeous he is, and then somebody says, well, you talking about the dog? And no, it's him. That was cut out. Any reference to him just being the most amazing creature she's ever seen in her life, that's all gone. You don't really know why she's after him. She doesn't talk about wanting to be with him. Like, all of that stuff is cut out. It's all about just her living the life that she wants to live on the human world. It's not about chasing him. The ending scene plays out just like in the animation, but the person steering the ship is not Eric anymore. Again, it's little tiny details. It really doesn't take that much away, but it is just part of this new hyper-independent woman message that Disney is trying to push. What you end up with is not a love story. She really doesn't have any reason to rescue him. She sees him and they try to make it a romantic moment, but there's nothing there for you to grab onto because they cut out the rest of the stuff. Them getting married, they don't even get married. They just go off to adventure together to explore new lands. In the end, they're more like business partners than they are actually a couple. So you don't have a love story anymore. You've got a movie that is trying to go in a couple different directions. The love story is not the main focus. They tried to bring up some explanations for why the mermaids can't go to the surface and why the humans might be worried. In the beginning, the movie opens up with the guys on the ship trying to harpoon what they think is a mermaid, so they're obviously scared of them. They tried to bring in this like humans and mermaids don't get along thing, but they didn't really explain it that much. Basically, the things they stripped out and the things they tried to add leave you with a movie where the characters don't have strong motivations to do much of anything that they're doing. The only reason they're doing this stuff in the movie is because they did in the original Little Mermaid. If you watch this movie without having seen that, without having any kind of background, I would not be surprised if you feel a little confused as to why anybody's doing anything. And if you do understand why they're doing it, I can guarantee you're not going to have any kind of investment because the characters don't give you any reason for why they're doing what they're doing. We move the setting to the Caribbean, which is a handy explanation for why Ariel is black and also the Queen is black and everybody in the town is black. It actually makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of Caribbean themes in the original, so moving it there is pretty good, except Eric is still white. And rather than just cast a black guy and just have a black cast, they dropped a line in there about how Eric is adopted. It makes no sense. It doesn't do anything to the story whatsoever. They just did it because they knew they checked too many boxes and they had this random white guy in a sea full of Caribbean people and they had to explain it somehow, so they threw a line in. And then lastly, they tried to expand some of the story. They tried to give Eric a little bit of background, try to give him some motivation for why he's out at sea. I don't think it really added much, but whatever. It's just a couple of lines. Same thing with the Ursula Triton relationship. The original movie, you really don't really know why Ursula is trying to get back at Triton. They don't really explain that much. This one, they tried to expand that. They're brother and sister. He's obviously locked her away for 15 years or something. Again, it's just a couple of lines. I don't really feel like it adds that much to the story, but they were obviously trying to flesh some things out. All right, now the animal sidekicks. Let's start off with Flounder. He looked absolutely atrocious. He was god-awful. I know that they're going for extra realism here, but it was a mistake. I can see what they were doing, and they shouldn't have done it. Not only was Flounder basically non-existent in the movie, he hardly gets any lines. He's not the cute, adorable sidekick anymore. He's just kind of there sometimes. He doesn't really have a good relationship with Ariel at all. And again, he looks horrifying. When they're doing these live action things, when you have talking animals, quit trying to do the ultra realism. Do the Mary Poppins thing. Just commit to the fact that they're going to look goofy. Have them be obviously animated on screen. Nobody complained about the dancing penguins. Nobody's going to complain if Flounder doesn't look extremely realistic. Once again, this is why animation is so great. Flounder has no expression because he doesn't have the same face from the animation. He doesn't have eyebrows. He doesn't have real eyes. He doesn't have a real mouth. So they kind of cut him out of the movie probably because they couldn't make it work. He looked stupid and had no expression. Sebastian also looks terrible. Again, it's just a moving mouth. He has a little bit of an eyebrow to work with. They try to give him some expression, but overall it just kind of sucks. Daveed Diggs' Caribbean accent was god-awful. It was laughably horrible, but he did have some really funny lines. Whenever he kind of sounded like he was off script and like just little asides, at the very end, he'd give that line about, you know, what I always say, kids got to be on their own, and Triton's like, well, you say that? And he kind of comes back with, I mean, yeah, sometimes. The way he delivers that line was really funny. It didn't sound very forced. It didn't sound overly scripted. Those little moments were peppered throughout the movie, and I mean, the whole audience was laughing out loud. It was very good. My family and I are torn on Scuttle. I thought Awkwafina was a very terrible choice. I think Scuttle looks horrific. I don't think Awkwafina was a good fit, and I typically like her a lot. I think she does a really good job of pointing out weird things that are happening in the movie. She does this great job of like being the audience, but on screen. Her in Shang-Chi, I thought was great. A bunch of crazy stuff is happening, and she is voicing our thoughts as the audience. Like, like, wow, this is all really insane stuff. And it was really funny. I thought she was really good in Raya and the Last Dragon. I am alone on this one in this household. My wife and kids really thought she was great. They thought she was funny, so your mileage may vary on this one. Weird stuff happens, like Scuttle dives down into the water and eats a fish in front of Ariel and Flounder, which is very strange. They talk about how horrible the humans are, and Scuttle is eating a fish right in front of them. This carries over from the original movie, but Ariel can talk to all the animals except for the dog. That's strange too. The weirdest part comes in the beginning, when Scuttle dives underwater and again is just kind of floating there and having a full conversation with Flounder and Ariel underwater. This is the scene where she's telling them what the dinglehopper is, which in the original animation just took place on a rock at the surface. For some reason, they put the bird underwater talking to them. It was the dumbest crap. I honestly couldn't pay attention to the conversation because the entire time my brain was just going, the bird's talking underwater, the bird's talking underwater, the bird's talking underwater. Scuttle and Sebastian also got a little duet, an original song that was added. It's kind of a rap. Again, my wife and kids thought it was great. Didn't do anything for me. I didn't like it. All right, next up, let's talk about these actors. Let's start off with Halle Bailey, and holy crap, this girl cannot act at all. Line delivery was just absolutely terrible. No emotion whatsoever in the line delivery or in the face. Just blank a lot of the movie. And you might be thinking, wow, what happens when she can't speak? Holy crap, it gets 100 times worse when she has to rely on only facial expression and she has none. They need to find Tyra and teach this girl how to smize. I am also convinced that she wasn't speaking the lines in a lot of the scenes. They would put things in front of her face. I believe that she either forgot the lines or couldn't deliver them with any kind of emotion. At one point, she's in the cave with all of her treasures and the camera starts panning around and there's like bits of coral and they're slowly moving across. So you can kind of see her in between them and you can tell her mouth is moving, but it doesn't seem to match up with what she's saying. And I firmly believe that they just said, just try your best to get through the lines. We'll have you record it in the booth afterward and we'll put some crap across your face so the audience can't tell that you really weren't saying those lines. So then she loses her voice and things get really awful because all she has to go on is her expression and she has almost none. She's on the beach staring at Eric and he comes back to life and she's relieved that the supposed love of her life is coming back to life. She saved somebody. Her face betrays none of these emotions. She swims away and watches from a rock to see what's going to happen as they rescue him. Her face says she's looking at a bowl full of cotton balls. Eric takes her out in the town. She's seeing things she's never seen before. Brand new discoveries. Her face looks mildly interested. During the parts of the movie where she can't speak, she looks like she's brain damaged. She doesn't speak. She doesn't look at people when they're speaking. She doesn't seem to be listening to anybody. She has no expression whatsoever on her face. She looks like she took a hit to the head. The only time she showed any emotion whatsoever was during the songs. Her singing was very good, and while she was singing it, her face actually started to show something. She had some emotion to come across in her voice, and that was it. Now moving on to Eric, who somehow was a worse actor than Ariel. This guy had absolutely no expression. His line delivery was so flat you could iron clothes on it. Just absolute garbage acting. And they changed the story so that he's not the love interest. Ariel's the love interest. He got an original song. It's a freaking simp anthem. He's stumbling down the steps singing about how torn up and heartbroken he is over her and how he can't think about anything else in the entire world. And his body language during this song sucks. They were telling him to look like he was distraught. He looked like he was drunk. He's stumbling around trying to appear sad. It was horrible. And again, he's the only white guy on a Caribbean island, and they try to justify this with one line. It was stupid. They could have just found a black actor. They couldn't have found somebody that acted worse than him. I saw better expressions on the guy who was selling hats in the marketplace. They should have just had him play the main role, and Eric should have been the hat salesman guy. Javier Bardem as Triton sounded like he was on tranquilizers. He sounded like he was almost asleep as he was delivering these lines. His daughter has just gone up to the surface to these humans that are terribly dangerous. He hates them. They killed his wife. Her life is in danger, and he is like,
Ariel, I cannot believe you went up to the human world. You must end this obsession and never go there again.
I've seen this man act. I don't know what happened. He also did this a lot. Ursula was definitely the best part of the movie, although that's not a super high compliment. McCarthy was made for this role. She sounded like it. She sang like it. Her body language was the same as Ursula from the animated movie. She was excellent as Ursula in every way. Now on to the music. They have a lot of songs you're going to recognize. There were a couple of them that I was frustrated about, especially Kiss the Girl and Under the Sea, because they dropped the animal animation. Again, I know they're going for the super realism, but part of what made Under the Sea so great was seeing all of the animals use each other as instruments. They're all dancing around. Same thing with Kiss the Girl. All the animals joined together to form this band. They cut most of that stuff out, and the scene suffered for it. I think the Under the Sea song was probably the best part of the entire movie. It was the brightest part. It was the most lively part. It was the time when everybody actually had happy facial expressions or any facial expressions whatsoever. The music still hits after 30 years. It was probably the best part of the entire movie. And there were some new songs added. I can't remember a lot of them. Eric had the Simp Anthem. Awkwafina and Sebastian had the little rap, the Scuttlebutt rap. There was I don't remember if it had words to it, but while Eric and Ariel were out touring the area in the marketplace, they had like a Caribbean song going on that they eventually danced to. That was pretty good. The overall Caribbean elements were a really good fit to this movie. Like, it's an island kingdom. They're on the island, they're next to the ocean. All of that, the Caribbean music, the Caribbean feel, I think that was a really good addition. Now, what do my wife and kids think about it? First, my wife, she's going to give it a 5 out of 10. She was bored to death the entire time. My 15-year-old gave it a 6 out of 10. She said it was a decent, fun remake, had good music. The actors were not good, but overall, she enjoyed herself. 13-year-old also gave it a 6 out of 10, said the actors were very bad, but the side characters brought it back. 11-year-old gave it a 6 out of 10. He said there were a lot of catchphrases that were slung in. The example that he gave was that the songs just felt tossed in, like you should recognize it, but it wasn't that good. He brought up the scene where Ariel jumps up onto the rock and the wave splashes as she's singing the song that I want to be a part of your world. He said that just felt really forced. It was just obvious that they were really trying to tell you, see, remember this scene? 9-year-old gave it a 7 out of 10, but then said that Ursula was really gross and he didn't like Ursula, and then when she got really huge, that was even worse. 7-year-old gave it a 9 out of 10. Said he really liked it. He said the Under the Sea song was outstanding. I don't know where the 9 came from because he took 3 bathroom breaks and could not sit still. I'm surprised he said he liked it. He didn't appear to. Lastly, the 3-year-old could not sit still. This movie did not appeal to this kid in any way whatsoever. Not a single scene caught her attention. She did enjoy the snacks and the soda though. Overall, all the kids agreed this is not a theater watch, this is a rental. One kid specified to me, this is not the $20 early access rental either. This is the $5 or $6 rental that you need to wait for. I'm also giving it a 5 out of 10. I did not have a good time. I was bored to tears for the most part. Very little of this movie was enjoyable. Thank God I had a giant tub of popcorn and I was still riding on the high from the overly expensive crumble cookies that I bought earlier in the day. They are fantastic, and this week they have a banana cookie, and I'm still thinking about it even as I film. In summary, I think we have to ask ourselves with these live actions, what is the point? Why was this even made? For me, I think the answer is no reason. Money, I guess. We're just doing it to put a new ESG score spin on an old classic where we're going to tweak it slightly so that Ariel doesn't need Eric quite so much. How does this movie compare to the original? It looks like absolute garbage compared to the original. It doesn't work on any level that the original worked on. It looks worse by comparison so badly. It's hard for me to think about what it would be like on its own because I have seen the original, but honestly, I think if you've never seen it, I still don't think you're going to enjoy this movie. I don't think the plot makes a whole lot of sense. I don't think the character motivation makes a whole lot of sense. It's slow. It's god-awfully slow. It's dreary. The CGI is not great. I don't think a lot of people are going to love this movie. So that's what I thought about it. If you've seen it, let me know what you think or what you're going in expecting. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time.